This episode of the Crackin Backs Podcast is sponsored by Guardian Grains, growing nutrition you can see. Welcome to the Crackin Backs Podcast. Today we're joined by health expert Dr. Bob Rakowski. He's here to tackle some of the most pressing questions in modern nutrition and wellness. What's really behind the rise of lab-grown foods? Are they as safe as they really say and nutritious as they claim? Struggling to find affordable, healthy meals in today's complex food landscape? Well, we've got you covered on this. Welcome to the Crackin Backs Podcast, Dr. Bob Rakowski. I am so excited to have you on because we love what you talk about. I understand you're a transformational expert, which I'm going to ask you to really distill that down into plain English for some of our lay audience. And what else you are doing is natural medicine. And more importantly, is you are in a town where I went to chiropractic college 38 years ago, Texas Chiropractic College. So you are in Houston, Texas, and your specialty is creating peak performance. Let's talk.
Let's talk. Yeah, I love it. You introduced the concept of wellness transformation. Let's just break that down. Well, as opposed to sick. And we've got this crazy world focused on sick care, especially in this part of the world. With over 80% of the diet being ultra processed and genetically modified, and herbicides, insecticides, fungicides, and the term transformation, literally to change form. You look at most people's forms; they're not very good. People are obese, overweight, pre-diabetic, cortisol resistant, autoimmune, depressed, you name it. We've created a circumstance where it's going to take some effort to get out of it. But the good news is we've got the right philosophy and tools to get there.
Yes. So I want to start right out of the starting blocks about, you recently posted something about lab-grown foods. I would love for you to elaborate on that and their whole issue with nutritional value and safety and all that. So please just have at it.
Well, there's a debate about how should we access food, and the debate has a lot of validity because factory farming may be one of the worst things we do for the planet. We take a bunch of different animals and we stick them in tight quarters, and then we feed them an unnatural diet, and we use over 80% antibiotics on them, and they're inflamed and sick animals create sick meat, and that's what people are eating. But when you start looking at lab grown, the whole idea started with the idea of medical need to culture stem cells. When people would have a burn, they could do skin grafts. And then they came to realize, wait a minute, we could actually take stem cells and grow skin, in a dish. And then they thought, okay, if we can grow skin, can we grow muscle? And they were able to do that too. And so if you had stem cells and you grew some type of protein, the good news is that it would be clean, right? It's not going to have the herbicides. It's not going to have the insecticides. It's not going to have the fungicides. But we know there's nothing natural about that. And I think there will be a long time before we figure out, is this stuff really decent for us? It's not just a calorie anymore. We have to understand that food is not just calories. It's not just protein, carbohydrate, fat, fiber, water, vitamins, minerals, amino acids, enzymes, fiber, etc. There's a lot of information in food. And we know that, for instance, if you grow a plant in a natural organic circumstance, that plant will develop a stronger immune system. And we also know that transfers to whoever eats the plant. So, if someone wanted to just fill their belly with something that had no obvious signal to it, well, maybe that would work. But we're beginning to realize there's a lot more to everything. Or maybe I'll go with Thomas Edison. Thomas Edison said, we don't know 1/1,000,000 of 1% of anything. And I think he's right, especially about food.
I understand that I read an article years ago that's based on a concept of nutritional value. And it was an opinion statement about obesity. Is there really an overeating problem, or is it the fact that if I took a tomato from 50 years ago and it was a nice red, robust, nutrition-filled tomato, and then you take that tomato from today, it's larger, more calories, and less nutritional value? Can you make a comment about some of that?
Well, part of if we talk about this concept of satiety, how do we know we're full? How do we know that we've given our body what it needs? And our brain and our nervous system has a very complex set of sensors that come to realize how much nutrition did I just receive? What's my blood sugar regulation? What's my acid alkaline balance? There's so many things there. And we know that across the board, food has less nutrition in it right now. One of the major factors for satiety is the nutrition quantity. It's the nutrition value. So if your body doesn't have the nutrients that it needs, it's always hungry. And I happen to think that that's one of the biggest factors behind the obesity pandemic. If we looked at the big four, I call them the deadly quartet: stress, that makes metabolism inefficient, breaks down lean, increases fat; toxins, if we want to get technical, all toxins inhibit mitochondria function. Mitochondria is where fat burning occurs; malnutrition, there's 22 different steps in what's known as the electron transport chain, and that's how we convert food to energy most efficiently. And if we don't have the right amount of those nutrients, then we're inefficient with energy production. If we're not efficient with energy, we don't exercise. If we don't exercise, we gain fat. So you see the big four of those going into play. So when we talk about this bigger tomato that has less nutrition in it, one thing we talk about caloric density or nutrient density. If I had something small that had a lot of nutrients in it, like a good multivitamin, multimineral, we might think that might be good for us. If we had something big that had essentially no nutrition in it, that might be a waste of our digestive effort.
Let's talk pasta, oats, grains, and more. I'm gluten-free, and this one item I can have without any consequences. Since we always talk about fueling our bodies the right way, that's where Guardian Grains comes in. No kidding. Their products are a massive shift towards healthy eating. Guardian Grains is all about healthy, sustainable grains that not only taste great, but are great for you and the planet. Whether it's breakfast, lunch, dinner, Guardian Grains has you covered with all kinds of nutrition that keep you going strong. Perfect for long days of just living life. Plus, knowing it's sustainably grown, that's a win-win. Sincere appreciation goes to the Guardian Grains for sponsorship of this episode and for making it easy to stay healthy while supporting sustainable farming. Click the link below the description to buy some of your own. You'll taste the difference.
Really good. Thanks. There's a lot of issue going on with highly processed foods these days and the way this whole food landscape is going, and getting affordable healthy options like organic has become so expensive. Please share your thoughts about processed foods, and especially for the lay people that are out there listening, what that actually means to their health and wellness.
Well, one of my mentors said years ago, eat food that spoils, but eat it before it does. And so, I found a YouTube video a few weeks ago about a guy that found a 40-year-old box of Twinkies. And, the box looked perfect. The things were perfectly packaged. He opened it up. He ate a Twinkie. It tasted exactly the same after 40 years. So, I tell people, even mold isn't stupid enough to eat that stuff. So why should we do it? And, there's a good soundbite. Michael Pollan, in his book, In Defense of Food, he said, something strange started happening in the U.S. in the 70s and 80s. He said food started flying off the shelf of the supermarkets and being replaced by food-like substances. It looked like food. It smelled like food. It maybe even tasted like food, but it wasn't food. And so now, one quote that I heard from the internet, no, that's not food. That's a science fair project. So, Casey Means, she was at Stanford. She was in her fifth year in head and neck surgery. She has really brought a lot of this with the book, Clean Energy. She and her brother, and, they worked at it from different angles. She went to Stanford Medical School, very bright lady, and he was part of food lobbying. And they both came to realize, wait a minute, we're looking at the same problem from different angles. All these food companies spending all this money to essentially poison people. And then Stanford, she's doing head and neck surgery, and she asked one of her professors, look, this is third operation on this person for sinus. Is there something we can do to prevent this problem? And she couldn't get an answer. And she realized, wait a minute, we're barking up the wrong tree. So
Right.
healthy bodies
We
don't get sick.
are hoping that they have a larger platform now to express all that conversation. I listened to them on one of the podcasts that they had. It was fantastic.
It was a really good one.
Yeah, they are exceptionally good. I think it was
Yeah. And when you think
Tucker
about,
Carlson.
yeah, what do you think about with Kennedy's new plan? Do you think it and I know they're on board with him. Do you see some change? What kind of changes do you see that could help? Because I get a lot of nutritionists that going, oh, I don't know, we can't get rid of the FDA. We can't do this. This is terrible. And I'm like, are you healthy now? I mean, we need change, right? So what's your thoughts on what just recently happened and the plan putting forth?
Well, awareness is the key. And Robert F. Kennedy has done such a good job bringing that to the forefront. People, if they're not familiar with some of the things that he's written, one, the real Anthony Fauci, his book, that's a horror story. And as Joe Rogan would say, if that were false, he'd be sued out of his mind, because what he's done to humankind, disguised as medical experimentation, is beyond horrible. But he also wrote the book Vax versus Unvaxxed. And within that book, he talks about there being over 60 studies that looked at demographics that would not vaccinate, like, the Amish wouldn't vaccinate their children, versus those that did. And in every single category, those who were not vaxxed were significantly healthier. But he also says within that book, President Trump invited Bobby Kennedy to be on a committee in 2016, and they were looking at this vaccine issue. And Anthony Fauci was in the room. And Bob Kennedy asked him, he says, look, where are your double-blind placebo-controlled trials on these vaccines? And as he talks through it, in the book, or, the audio version, he says, look, Fauci opened up his briefcase and said, well, let me look. And then as he went through all the studies, he says, you know what? I don't have it with me. Let me get it back to you. That was 2016. We're almost 2025. He hasn't submitted that study. Why? Because it doesn't exist. So, what do I think about Bobby Kennedy and this book, Good Energy, and everything else? The more people know about what's happened with food that is not in the best interest of health, I think the better off we are. We all do have a choice. Now, Kelly Brownell, Yale University, said over 2 decades ago in this country, he said, food in this country is engineered to be addictive. They have flavor chemists. And when you look at a loaf of bread that has 35 different chemicals in it, what are some of those that we can't pronounce? Well, I promise you a lot of them are designed to make it taste good, or as they call it, hyper palatable, and to even hijack brain chemistry and make it addictive.
Wow. So just so our listeners have faith in change, in massive change, I have 2 people that one is a patient, one is my ex-wife, actually, who were best friends, but they both are part of a huge wine distributing company. And they both have said to me, in fact, this past week, one of the patient of mine who is at a high level in the wine industry, it had said to me that the consumption of alcohol has gone down because there are a lot of people online and the Instagram influencers are commenting on how bad it is for the brain. It's alcohol, it's a poison, and so people are becoming more aware. So there is hope.
Well, and I'm going to go with ancient wisdom on that. Everything's a toxin. It's a matter of dose. And so you look, can you make good use of wine? Sure. A little bit, the right dose, the right kind, better quality is better. And so now for men, 2 drinks a day is the max. For women, 1 drink a day is max. But if there's a breast cancer risk, women should only have 1 drink every 10 days. And I hadn't seen the similar number for prostate, but prostate cancer is essentially the cousin of breast cancer. So likely those males should do less alcohol as well. But, the alcohol and survivability, there's no doubt that there's a bell-shaped curve. People who drink a little live longer than people that drink nothing. People that drink the most die early. So can people get by with a little? I think most people can.
Yeah.
But those at higher risk, they should definitely avoid it.
Yeah. Great to hear. I want to get back to the idea of something that would help getting back to basics that would help some of our listeners as well. And that is, just what could they do? You know, organic food has become so expensive. And do you have any suggestions on, nutritious sources of food that is more affordable?
Well, there's people growing their own, and there's even like square foot gardening and in home vertical towers where people are getting creative about giving people options to create their own food. Now, not everybody's going to live in an area where they can get to know their farmer, but that's really ideal. If you could have an organic farmer in your neighborhood, and these different co-ops where you commit to buy, so they know they've got customers, well, then you can probably get a better deal on price. But we're in a world right now where more than half of the U.S. population has a side hustle. And I think it is because of the ridiculous rise in all costs of living, including food.
Yeah.
And there's an organic farmer that he's got an interesting meme. He says, if you think organic produce is expensive, have you priced cancer lately? And he is exactly right. Better quality food, better quality fruits and vegetables prevents cancer. A worse quality is going to increase the probability. So where do you want to put your money? I would invest it in long-term health.
Very, very cool. Good thought. So, switching gears just a little bit, vegan and carnivore, and there's always a debate amongst, well, it seems like all diets. It's whatever is in fashion at the moment. But any thoughts about that from a nutritional standpoint? If you can compare some of them, and which are the pros and cons to each?
The best advice I think I ever heard about nutrition was to eat like our ancestors ate. And we go back a couple hundred years ago, there wasn't processed food. There wasn't the ultra processed food. There wasn't this 1/3 of our calories from vegetable oil. In 1800, people got an average of 5 pounds processed sugar. Now they're over 120 pounds processed sugar per person per year. So it's pretty crazy there. But every diet has a place. It's been said there's no consensus on what the healthiest diet is, but there is consensus on what the sickest diet is. And that's the standard American diet, modern American diet, processed food diet. So vegan, there is a vegan culture. Loma Linda, California, the Seventh-day Adventists, and they're one of those blue zones where they live to be over 100 longest. So there might be something to that. What's the advantage of carnivore? We have more bugs in our gut than we have cells in our body. The difference between good bugs and bad is what they eat and what they poop. Good bugs eat poop and poop nutrients. Bad bugs eat nutrients and poop toxins. Most of the bad bugs in our gut happen to be vegan. So if people are eating plant fibers, they might be feeding bad bugs in their gut and creating problems. So I've seen people have wonderful benefit from maybe 7 to 10 days of a pure carnivore reset, where like Jordan Peterson and his daughter, Michaela Peterson, they do red meat, salt, and water. And I've seen some very substantial changes, blood pressure dropping, blood sugar dropping, cholesterol dropping on an all animal diet. That's pretty interesting. People losing weight, inflammatory markers going down. Harvard did a study of over 2,000 people that were diabetic on the carnivore diet. It was 6 months long. And everybody that was on insulin was able to get off of insulin in that study. So there's benefits. There's benefits to vegan. There's benefits to carnivore. But we are omnivores. We have a hybrid digestive tract. And as I tell people, I've got incisors, I've got canines, I've got molars for grinding. Our entire digestive tract is a hybrid, and structure dictates function. We were meant to have all food types, not one or the other.
Wow, that's a great thought. I would imagine that reading labels is such an important facet of our shopping extravaganza. And even though I've tried to, go with, vegan style or what do they call it? The fake meat or what have you. If you read the label, there's probably more junk in some of those
Beyond Meat,
fake meat products. And I also was gluten-free for a while. So not all gluten-free products are healthy for you. So I found that out the hard way when I started reading the labels. Any thoughts on your perspective of reading labels and being more conscientious of that?
Well, that's the starting point. You ought to be able to pronounce everything on the label. So one of my mentors most recently said, I like one ingredient meals. So what's a one ingredient meal? Beef could be a one ingredient meal. Broccoli could be a one ingredient meal. Asparagus, right? Even a salad is complex. And so, you start looking at it, and it is easiest. I call them mono meals. And I've said that for years. When I have someone that I want them to do a gut reset, I like them to do one food per meal, and often with digestive enzymes, because we want to see how is your body reacting to that meal. And one at a time, you can tell it a lot more effectively. And people do repeat their diet. Last feeding survey I looked at, about every 4 days, people repeat their diet. We don't have much variety. So if you're just eating one thing at a time, you'll see, is this serving me or is it moving me in the wrong direction?
Wow. Right.
That's fantastic. We're coming into the holidays, and in holidays, everybody overindulges. They eat way too much sugar, way too much candy, way too much whatever. And then you have, Thanksgiving, where they eat way too much turkey and they're tryptophan coma, afterwards trying to watch a football game. What are your lifestyle strategies to not only get through the holidays, but if they do overindulge, how to get out of that period of excess?
Well, holidays, I've had this conversation with patients now for 3+ decades. I always like to finish the holidays in better shape than I start. And if you're proactive and you can do that. So I tell people, you want to earn your desserts. And if you realize that, maybe a piece of pie has 300 calories, well, you might have to run 3 miles to earn that, and then you're getting some of the extra sweet potato and everything else. And by the time you look at it, if you're getting 5, 6, 7, 800 extra calories a day, which is easy enough to do, then you start the year behind the 8 ball. So, I like people to just keep track of it. Why not weigh every day? And, I'll tell this story. I had a patient over 30 years ago. He was 88 years old, great shape, great health, all his hair, all his teeth, no medications. And I asked him, what's your secret to longevity? And he said, Bob, it's no secret. I wake up every morning, I step on the scale. He says, if I'm a pound heavy, I eat light and I exercise more. If I'm a pound light, I get to have dessert. Now, we know the scale is more dynamic than that. There's people that just between electrolytes and water, the scale can have about a 5-pound difference. But I would like people to be that proactive. Keep track of what you're eating, keep track of what you're exercising, keep track of how you're moving. And why not make it a goal? Weigh yourself right now, do your body measurements, see how your clothes are fitting. Why not be in better shape January 1 than you are today? And I would call that a successful holiday season.
It was said that this is a crazy statistic, but between Thanksgiving and New Year's, America takes in 60% of their calories. So within a 2-month period, they take for the year, 60% is shoveled in those last 2 months. And then they make New Year's resolutions that don't stick.
Right. Yeah. And on that, on that note, you'll hear in the holidays, they stress eat, I'm stress eating. It's sad to know that in December, there's more suicides than any month of the year. Right. And then with all the external, with the election and all this stuff, there's enough external, there's no shortage of external stressors out there. What's some recommendations you tell your patients to turn down the noise, to change their mind, and a daily practice to get them in the right mindset?
Well, daily practice is easy enough, right? Count your blessings. Gratitude is one of those things that really keeps us moving forward. A great day starts the night before. If you have good sleep, you're not likely to be stressed out of your mind the day, or at least less likely. But one of my best interventions that I've done for years is what I call a stress reset. I do a combination of melatonin, theanine, and Ganoderma spores every waking hour. Melatonin, we know that the gut makes 400 times the melatonin as the brain. It actually binds to the adrenal glands and prevents the pituitary drive of stress on the body. The theanine is an amino acid in green tea. It's a natural GABA facilitator. It crosses the blood-brain barrier and immediately puts the brakes on mental stress. And then the Ganoderma spores actually calms the body, the mind, and the spirit. In 2022, they finally studied it and realized that it lowers circulating cortisol. So, if I get people, 1, having gratitude, 2, getting good sleep, 3, doing a stress reset, and then how about 4, going into the holidays proactive, planning out your meals and exercise, I think that's a great way to buffer stress. And, you mentioned December being, a month of suicide. All of these deaths of despair need to all wake us up to realize, look, enough fighting. Let's love one another and make this world better. I had a suicide in my own practice this week, a 25-year-old male. That's what it looks like at this point. And I can't imagine anything more tragic than that. You get that call and you come to realize, how could someone so young with their whole life ahead of them have so much despair? Well, we've created that. As we've created this ill health in terms of body, I think we've created body, mind, and spirit that all need help. And together, I think we can solve it. But one loving deed at a time, one good choice at a time.
Oh, what a great recipe, though. Thank you for sharing that. Can you mention that third nutritional product that you mentioned after three?
Yeah, Ganoderma spores, also known as reishi. Medicinal mushrooms, over a $30 billion a year market. Full disclosure, I'm an investor in what I consider the best organic reishi company. And if people want to reach out to me, I'm happy to help them source that. But the Ganoderma spores, the spores are how the plant replicates. Ganoderma lucidum is called the flowering body. The mycelium has gotten some press. There's a documentary out there called Fantastic Fungi, because they're finding that these mushrooms, they can be good for post-traumatic stress. The mushrooms can block replication of HIV. That's right in PubMed. It was good for that, virus that the world tried to hype up, over these last couple of years. We knew by March of 2020 that Ganoderma lucidum reishi was effective against that virus. And you start looking, man's pharmacy, God's pharmacy. God's pharmacy has plenty to offer. Man's pharmacy too, but you have to use that with a lot of caution. God's pharmacy, a lot more latitude and safety there.
Whew, wow. Well, thank you for that. Thanks for elaborating on that. That's fantastic. As a health expert that you are, what are some fundamental habits or exercises that you believe might be crucial for longevity and maintaining physical strength as we age?
Well, I'm going to go with my Magnificent Seven. You've got to eat right, drink right, think right, move right, sleep right, poop right, talk right every single day. And I'm going to go through the simple hacks of it. So for eat right, if God made it, it's okay. If man made it, stay away. For drink right, everything you put in your body counts. So if you're going to put in coffee or tea, and the world drinks a ton of coffee or tea, why not have healthy, organic, turbocharged? Those are associated with longevity. It's like something like 53% of the coffee in one study has mold and mycotoxins. There's herbicides, insecticides, fungicides, heavy metals, microplastics, clean choices across the board. So no liquid calories. We know that if people drink sugary drinks, they're not very satisfying. They spike blood sugar. They cause different problems. Think right. So Daniel Amen has a TED Talk. He says, what I learned after 83,000 brain scans, he learned you could change the brain. And he was on a podcast and someone asked him, if you were an evil genius and wanted to destroy brains in the world, what would you do? He says, I would create a world just like we created it. And so one of his top tips is stay away from bad news. If it bleeds, it leads is one thing we see. And people are waking up to the mainstream news, mainstream media. We are wired to avoid danger. And if someone can make us think that we're in danger, they automatically have our attention. So avoid the bad news. Move right. I like every joint, every range of motion, every day, pain-free. And it doesn't have to be extensive. There was a Japanese researcher by the name of Tabata, and he wanted to find a very efficient way of exercising. So he took two groups that were age matched, health matched. Let's say they were relatively fit people, 25 to 30 years old. He had one group do light exercise, like a mile jog for 1 hour, 3 times a week. The other group did 4 minutes 3 times a week, where the 4 minutes was 20 seconds of all out, the highest intensity they could do for whatever exercise they were doing, followed by a 10-second recovery, 8 rounds. So 20 seconds all out, 10-second recovery, 20 seconds on, 10-second recovery, 8 rounds. That's 4 minutes 3 times a week. And he found at the end of 3 months, the people that did that had better body composition, better strength, better aerobic fitness, better anaerobic fitness. So that was a big part of the high intensity intervals. But I do want people to move every joint, every range of motion in a way that's pain-free. You can go on YouTube and you can see these 95-year-old ballroom dancers, that when they get on the dance floor, they come back to life, because moving your body does keep you alive. Sleep right, the best of the best sleep, 8.6 hours a night. Vitamin S, Superman, that S on his chest is for sleep. Poop right, that one tends to get chuckles, but all elimination routes, whether we're exhaling, sweating, liver, kidney, bowel, to get rid of toxins. And, if we have the right food, right drink, and honor our elimination habits, and breathing included, and sweating, all the better for us. Talk right. Well, every cell in the body is potentially in communication with every other cell. Most people are familiar with the term the endocrine system, which is a broadcast message, like insulin or growth hormone or thyroid hormone or testosterone or estrogen. But there's also autocrine signaling, where cells talk to themselves, and paracrine signaling, where cells talk to their neighbors. And I'll give a very ridiculous example. If I'm teaching a seminar and there's 200 doctors in the audience, I usually look out and I say, I see we have a couple hundred people here, but I also notice no one's sitting on anybody's lap here. Why? Because we respect each other's space. If food comes by, I'm not stealing from other people's plate, because we respect other people's nourishment and food. And if we have to use the restroom, we're going to leave the room and go in private and take care of business, and then come back when we're done. And the reason I mention that, and then I lead into it and say, cancer violates all that. Cancer doesn't respect your space. It wants to crowd you. It wants to crush you. It wants to destroy you. It wants to eat your food, drink your drink, and then it poops and pees all over you. So it's a very bad neighbor. And statistically, it's estimated that 99.9% of people walking around get 500 to 1,000 cancer cells a day. So the solution is the immune system. Keep a valid immune system. And what are the enemies of the immune system? Stress, toxins, malnutrition, physical inactivity. So the things we're talking about keep us safe. They can be and should be great daily practices. And the more we do to get better, the better we make the whole world.
Oh my gosh, that was a fantastic list. That was great. And we all love the poop conversation, because nobody wants to address that. So thank you for approaching it. So we have an issue with mental stress these days, more so over the last couple of years than ever before, possibly because of COVID and other factors. How does diet affect your state of mind and emotions?
Well, first and foremost, we have more brain chemistry in our gut than we have in our head, between our ears. And so we have to know that what we're putting in that gut is going to matter. And so there was an author a number of years ago. He wrote a book called The Second Brain, and he was talking about the gut. And over 90% of the serotonin in the gut, over 90% of the dopamine, and the bugs in our gut actually make brain chemicals as well. And so you start looking, and there's plenty of evidence now that you should really start with the gut for any type of mental health issue that people have, whether it's the food they're putting in, their digestive capacity, the bugs, or probably a combination of all the above. You get those things right, there's a lot of things in terms of the brain that get better.
Dr. Rakowski, could you please, I think it's a perfect time to make a comment about antibiotics.
Yep. Well, the word anti is against, bio, life. Antibiotics are against life. And if you swallow an antibiotic, you're going to kill some of the bugs in your gut. And once you kill off those bugs, and the healthy bugs are more vulnerable. Isn't it fascinating that the stuff that's good to us is really vulnerable to the antibiotics, that the bad bugs, not so much anymore, because we've abused them so much. And so over 80% of antibiotics is used in livestock. If people have meat or milk or eggs, there's residues of those antibiotics in it. We know that, by the way, when animals poop, the antibiotics get into the soil, the plants are taking it up. And as we put those things through our gut, as we kill off the good bugs, then we can have overgrowth of yeast, parasite, fungus, bacteria. And as that happens, our whole body goes downhill. So there's certainly a link between antibiotic overuse and chronic illness, antibiotic overuse and yeast infection, antibiotic overuse and breast cancer, antibiotic overuse and chronic fatigue. If we need an antibiotic, awesome. that's the time to use it. But using an antibiotic for anything or everything or prophylactically, generally not a good idea.
I am so glad you brought that up and elaborated on that, because antibiotic use, it was interesting. There seems to be a pendulum. Even the FDA was prompting physicians to reduce the number of prescriptions for antibiotics because they understood this. We were building these. Our bodies were a medium for developing super infections.
Right.
Not just when you take your full round of antibiotics, but oftentimes people would get a 7-day prescription and go, "Oh, I'm feeling better after 2 days or 3 days, so I'm not going to." So what they don't realize, what they killed off allowed the strong to survive because they did anyway. So it's like a real catch-22. So thank you for bringing that up, because I think what's happening is the pendulum is swinging back to the wrong side again. And I also believe it's because doctors, I don't know if it's the insurance company's fault or the doctor's fault, but the insurance companies are squeezing doctors down to spend an average of 7 minutes with a patient. I don't know about, I know about Dr. Terry, and I'm sure, Dr. Rakowski, you spend a little more than 7 minutes, maybe a lot more than 7 minutes with a patient. And we solve complicated problems and usually the medical cast-offs. So how is it that the only way a doctor can see you in 7 minutes is he just writes you a prescription. So, let that sink in our listeners' heads. A lot of our listeners are already practicing the way we think. And then it's the lay people that really need to, develop an understanding. If you have any thoughts about or commentary in regards to that.
It's a profit-driven system. So, I over this last go round, we probably learned quite a bit about that. So, for instance, I've got a patient that's a pediatrician, and he didn't, he felt so coerced and forced. He was getting paid $1,000 to inject 6-month-old babies for COVID-19, and getting a lot of pressure from people that run the clinic because you're leaving a lot of money on the table. Now, first and foremost, how does that make any sense? It certainly doesn't. It makes a lot of dollars for the drug companies and the clinics. But when you're focused on profits, healthcare is not very profitable. Sick care is. And so, what would, the best expense in health would be investing in a good gym, a good trainer, a proactive healthcare provider, and organic food. Whereas sick care, you say, I feel lousy. Someone, looks at lab, maybe AI did the interpretation. Maybe the doctor doesn't need as much time, but keep in mind the word doctor means teacher. How much can you teach someone in 7 minutes? Right. And, are they even trying to? And from my experience, talking to people that have seen these other doctors, it is just a matter of, here's a drug, get out of here, and health. No, we don't study that. That's not what they're there to do. So hopefully we see a big shift in that coming in the near future.
Well, I hope so. I got a question, and this is so kind of wraps a couple of things we've talked about, but my son was living in Portugal, and he used to say that he would go eat dinner at 6 and he was full and he wouldn't be hungry for the rest of the night and would have a great night's sleep. He comes home and he eats at 6, he eats again at 8, he eats again at 10. He doesn't sleep really well. He's always hungry. And for a parent, part of my friends, it's fucking expensive because you're paying for 3 major meals. So, and Spencer talked about for people that are trying to save money, but I'm like, what is the main difference between the density of food in, let's say, Portugal, Spain, Italy versus the density in the food in the US? And how do you find food that's going to be dense and nutrient that they can eat at 6 o'clock and be fine till next morning, but without growing it, especially beef? I have no room for a cow in my house.
Well, good luck with that, because it's so amazing how many things are different. So like, Kennedy, you brought into life, you talking about personal care products. We have something like 1,200 chemicals that are banned here that are used in products everywhere. You started looking at things like Roundup, glyphosate, herbicides, insecticides, fungicides. I consistently see from my own experience, when I go to Europe, when I go to Asia, when I go to Africa, I eat like a king and I come back lighter. And I
Yeah.
do sleep better, and I do have more energy. And it's got to be that there's more good stuff in it and less bad stuff in it. And how much of a difference? Well, in your son's case, enough to make he's got to eat 3 meals, and he's still not satisfied for what he could get in one there. So
Right.
that's probably a reasonable estimate of how much better that food is.
So where do you find the
Whew.
good food out here? You
You either
have to
grow
go to
your
farmers
own,
markets
you
or
know, the organic farmer in the farmer's market, but I think there's more than that. I think there's differences in the air. I think there's differences in the groundwater. Because when I have patients that compare how they feel in Europe and their diet and their body comp and their body response, there really is no comparison. It's just as dramatic as what you're talking about with your son.
Yeah, it's amazing. So you developed a unique protocol, resetting the body's stress response. Please share that with. So far, you've given us just a ton of information. So I'm just going to squeeze you for more. So
Okay.
give me some insights and protocols on how you do this, resetting the body's stress response.
I want to give a little background first. So, I've taught on the functional medicine circuit for over 3 decades, and it was 2002. I did an international series with the founder of functional medicine, Dr. Jeffrey Bland, on stress-related disorders. And you come back and, there's data, and it even goes up to modern day, but they estimate that somewhere between 75 and 90% of all doctor visits are in some way related to stress. And when we're stressed over something and when our body gets in fight or flight, our body prioritizes resources to fight or flight. So that means it shuts down digestion, it shuts down liver to a certain degree, it shuts down kidney to a certain degree. The immune system shuts down, higher level thought process, even joy shut down. So, if people are not digesting, if they're not absorbing, if they're not detoxifying, if they're not having good thoughts, how good can their life be? And so when I started putting people on stress reset, the melatonin every waking hour, suddenly you come to realize that when the body no longer has the stress drive, it frees up resources to digest, to absorb, to repair cells, to detoxify. So the melatonin calms the body, theanine calms the mind, and the Ganoderma spores, there's actually medical literature that says it calms the body by lowering cortisol and driving the parasympathetic nervous system, calms the mind because it's a GABA facilitator. And then the spirit, that's a little tougher. They actually call it the herb of spiritual potency. But when we put the brakes on stress and people suddenly can make better use of what they have in their body and get rid of what they don't need, a lot of things get better. I have plenty of people that feel that the stress reset was the 7 to 10 days that bounced their life back in the direction to where they could see hope again.
Whew, that is fantastic. Yeah, I find that stress. Well, stress is provoked by breaching all the sleeping and the eating properly and so on, and then it causes so many. You hear about it all the time, causing disease states, and if people can just tend to turn off the TV, especially when I'm in South Florida, so especially when there's a hurricane coming, it is a known fact that the therapists and psychologists are much more busy the weeks before and during this, the way the news reports the hurricane. And it's not like Dr. Terry's earthquakes that
fires.
Boom, come and go.
we get the fires and we'll watch it and they'll just have the same thing on for hours. It's the same thing. I got to interject something. You talked about melatonin every hour. Can you break that down for the person that's listening? I mean, what is your milligrams? Are you literally taking it every hour you're awake? And what milligrams are you talking about? And what was the second thing you mentioned? You said a tea or something.
Theanine is an amino acid in green tea, but so melatonin, 1 to 2 milligrams every waking hour, really depending on body size, right? So you get a 200-pound male, he'll do, the 2 milligrams. You get a 120-pound female, she'll do 1. Theanine is 100 to 200 milligrams every waking hour. The Ganoderma spores actually do 500 milligrams of an organic spore. And between those three, it's just a phenomenal way of pulling the plug on stress fast. Now, people think, well, you give me melatonin, wouldn't that make me tired? It shouldn't. Keep in mind, if the gut makes 400 times the melatonin as the brain, and it does, why are we not sleeping 24/7? And the answer is it doesn't cross the blood-brain barrier. But theanine actually does, and so do the Ganoderma spores. So that's how we break it down. So 1 milligram melatonin if you're petite, 2 milligrams if you're a little bigger, 100 milligrams theanine, 200 if you're a little bigger, 500 milligrams of Ganoderma spores, no toxicity on either direction. I have them do that every waking hour for 7 to 10 days. I'll have people that set a little alarm on their iPhone, and it goes off and boom, they just take their nutrients. But it's amazing. Some people will feel real tired for a couple of days because they're running on stress hormones. And I just did a consult earlier today, and it said it took them 6 or 7 days where they felt absolutely horrible. Then by the 7th day, they realized, whoa, something good just happened. My body is
awesome.
working right. I feel wonderful. So yeah,
Oh,
you got to do it long enough, intense enough to make a difference.
what a great tip for entering our holidays. What a great thing for people to do. Thank you for that.
Yeah. I will say that the melatonin thing there is some interesting effects in a positive manner. I started taking it before bed, and I cannot. No, I'm not saying this just because we're on the air. It was actually remarkable, the rest and the quality of sleep, not the quantity of sleep, the quality of sleep that I've been getting, that I almost was afraid to take it every single night. So I tried to back off because I didn't want to become desensitized to it, but it's been fantastic every time. So
it's anti-cancer by 10 different mechanisms. It's a mitochondrial specific antioxidant. They're now tracing melatonin back. They can find it in fossil records over 1 billion years. If you can imagine, they can have that level of preciseness. So melatonin is very important throughout the entire life cycle and every living organism.
Fantastic.
I'm going to order a couple bottles of that right now. Thanks. That was great. Plus the other two things that you had mentioned as well. Dr. Rakowski, we're going to go into one of our favorite parts of our program, and it's near the end of it, and it's called the rapid fire questions. You obviously are quick on your feet. I'm sure you had your melatonin and all the other theanine and everything, so I'm sure you're ready. We have 5 questions. You can answer them briefly and concisely, but I must say we tend to get hung up on a cool thing that you might say, so be prepared. Are you ready?
I was born ready. Let's do it.
Right on. Question number 1. How did you get the job of CHO, Chief Happiness Officer?
But you know what? I decided, I just made a decision. As a teen, I wasn't happy. And I probably because we all go through different stuff and we haven't found our identity yet. And I adopted a mentor. And he said, and I don't know, he certainly didn't come up with the best way to be happy is to give happy. So why don't you smile at people and give them compliments? And you know what? I thought, all right, let's give that a shot. And you know what? You only needed to do that for a day or two. And you come to realize, wait a minute, when you can be nice to people, when you can add value, when you can share a smile, and there's one of those ideas, right? If someone doesn't have a smile, give them one of yours, right? Because we have an infinite supply. It's better to give than receive. And that was a good way to figure that out. And everybody wants happy. So give happy, be happy.
Well, my wife walks around the office saying that she's the chief, either happiness officer or the chief fun liaison. I mean, she's giving herself the same labels. And I have to admit, she's always laughing and patients are always going, gosh, that makes me feel better. So kudos to my wife. She's our CHO at our office. Yeah.
That's great. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention something that you had started to say earlier about farming and, responsible farming. We have had 2 podcasts with a woman that I call her Dr. Farmer because she is so comprehensive and understanding on responsible farming. She's with her company's Guardian Grains, and to listen to her shows and hear what she talks about, that how other farms adulterate food and just to make the grade and produce and get the production out there, that it's shocking. With that said, question number 2 is
we got to hook these 2 up. Dr. Bob, I'm gonna send you information of Dan Lewowski, It's a person you should really get to know, because you can buy direct from her, so you can get the pastas, you can get the grain, and it's all regenerative farming. She does it the right way. So I'm going to make sure you guys are hooked up after the show.
Thank you.
And quite frankly, that's the only pasta that that I dared to eat, because I'm gluten sensitive.
Yeah, she's fantastic.
No bloating. And she's got the coolest conversation about it. It's very, very involved in a manner that we didn't know. With that said, we understand you are a coffee lover. So we just happen to also have a coffee company that supports us. And we want to know what your favorite blend is.
Well, the king of coffee from Organo won the award as the best organic coffee in the world in 2022, reishi infused. That's my go-to. Tested for herbicides, insecticides, fungicides, molds, mycotoxins, microplastics, heavy metals, clean across the board, and infused with organic reishi. That's my go-to coffee.
Wow. So it's like a mushroom coffee as well?
Yeah.
Is that, because I'm hearing more about these.
Right in it. Yep.
Fantastic. Thank you. Question number 3, what food trend drives you crazy the most?
Oh boy. Probably these planned packaged diets, whether we're talking Weight Watchers or something like that. They're, can they be good? Sure they can, but it gets people away from their actual relationship with their food. I think if people had a relationship from actually planting it, growing it, making sure that it was clean, that'd all be better. Now, it's not practical across the board, but the closer you can get to knowing it's clean and preparing it, the better. I guess the trend of putting convenience over health, we're paying the price, and that would be the trend that drives me most crazy.
Very good. Question number 4, you seem to be inspired by a lot of mentors and very knowledgeable folks in your history. What's one piece of advice you got a long time ago that you still use today that guides you?
Well, it might be the most universal piece, right? That's going to be the golden rule. Treat others like you want to be treated. You go back, every single society, that's been successful, they've had some version of that. And so, I think that's as good as it gets. Treat others as we want to be treated.
Very good. Thanks. Question number 5, and our final question is, what is your favorite holiday ritual?
Oh boy. Well, now I'm a grandfather, right? So
that's great.
that changed over time. I've got 5 granddaughters, and somehow our family gets really good at making girls. So my 6th is actually due in May. But the ritual, maybe it'd even be the Easter egg hunt, because you see these little kids and they're so excited, and they're looking around, and it's interactive. They're playing, they make it fun. Presents, my kids are still a little small. It'd be hard to beat Christmas morning, but right now with the 5 granddaughters, I'm actually going to go the Easter egg hunt is going to be my favorite holiday ritual for them.
Cage-free organic eggs, I'm sure.
Well, these are the plastic ones with little surprises in it, but you bet.
Even better.
We do free range organic if we're going to eat them. Yep.
That's great. Well, that wraps up our rapid fire questions. Dr. Rakowski, you are just a monsoon of information. So thank you so much for being on our show.
Well, thank you both. Wow, that's the hour just flew. That is beyond amazing.
Well, we so appreciate you and your wisdom, and being now part of our Crackin Backs family. It's kind of cool, and whoever taught you and told you to smile, that's the one thing I appreciated you when we first connected on LinkedIn was I go, man, I was drawn to that smile. So, you keep it up, keep making people healthy, keep working hard. And, if we can support you in any way, we're going to do that. So thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank
absolutely.
you. What a joy. Our wonderful world needs all the help that it can get.
Yeah,
yes, it does.
Thanks.
All right, brother. Take care, bud.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of the Crackin Backs Podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you follow us on Instagram at Crackin Backs Podcast. Catch new episodes every Monday. See you next time.